everybody. So today we're going to create something landscape. So I'm thinking mountains, sunset, maybe some pine trees, and the first start of snow because winter is coming and the holidays near. So I'm going to start off with a big brush and some white paint, some aqua paint, some pink paint, some blue paint, and some yellow paint. So I'm going to take a little bit of white. I'm using canvas, so I'm not using the watercolor paper. And I'm going to just create white on my horizon. And I'm a little bit below the halfway mark if you want to follow along. Kind of hard to see white on white. But then I'm going to introduce a little tiny bit of yellow. I'm just going to pull that up a little bit. Add a little bit more white to soften it. I kind of vibe in the pastels of winter. A little bit more white and a little touch of pink. Should start to streak in a bit of a peachy color. Making nice horizontal brush strokes, just nice and thin. I'm gonna rinse off my brush. Add a little touch of white and a little bit more of the pink. Nice soft pink, pretty solid above. I'm gonna drop down like that into some of that peach color. Brush again. Add a tiny bit of that teal color. It should turn a little bit purple when I drop it down. And I'm going to take just a little tiny bit of darker blue. I'm going to switch to another brush. I'm going to take a little bit of white and a little bit of blue. I'm just going to start to kind of create a little bit of a water feature. Alright, so when I do my paintings, I have an idea and then I just roll with it. So I don't know what it's going to look like. So as I'm painting, you get to watch it unfold. So I'm just going to try a paint knife. And we'll go ahead and just put that back in there. I'm going to try a paint knife technique. I'm going to create some mountains. And we want these to be kind of jagged, rugged. Probably have to make a little bit more purple. All right, I made way more purple, so I can spread this on a little bit easier. I just want to get kind of this really rugged texture. Okay, so I've got my texture, I've got my jagged mountains. I want to create some foothills and maybe just a little bit of fog maybe. All right, I'm going to clean a small brush and add a little bit of white. I'm going to start to kind of soften up and maybe even take off some excess paint. I think it's a little thick down here. And I'm going to make a little bit of a darker purple, almost like a silhouetted purple. And I want to create a couple little foothills. Probably go back into this color right now. I'm just trying to figure out the placement. I've got this kind of on there, I am going to let that dry again before I even touch any more to it. And I want to kind of build up the foreground. So I've got a little bit of brown, a little bit of yellow, and I'm just going to kind of make a soft kind of brownish golden color. I'm just going to wiggle it in between the blue. Now the blue is dry, so if I go over it, I'm okay. So just get a couple of other colors in there. So if I streak it in, I'm okay with that too. Maybe even pat it in. This is just going to serve as a background anyway. I'm envisioning some kind of snow here at one point, but I'm just filling in the canvas completely so that I have a little more to work with when I come back. I want to be very careful not to get into that purple. And I'm kind of brushing out the texture of my brush stroke so it doesn't prove to be too textury. I'm going to do it again over here. All right, I've got a pretty good base. I just want to let that set up a little bit, and I've got some other fun techniques that we're going to be doing. So we'll just let that sit for a bit, and we'll come back with some more. All right, I let it dry, but I also blew dried a little bit. It is thick paint right now, so what acrylic paint does is it skins over and it's wet on the inside, so you want to be very careful not to swipe it. It may smear your next few steps. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit more, but I want to kind of work the water a little bit. So it's got a pretty good base of drying, and I'm going to add a little bit of blue and a little touch of black to get more of like a navy color. And I want to add a couple little shadows in the water here. So it's a little bit colder, a little bit chillier maybe, but also the dancing of light with the sunset. Just kind of tapping along the side. And it's going to get a little darker as it goes farther away. And some of the brown is already dry, so if you want to go ahead and move your brush into there, you can. Just have that shadow. So I'm going to gather some pine cone. All right, so while I was letting that dry, I found a pine cone and I plucked apart the parts of the pine cone that are on the outside, the leaves, I guess, for better, explanation. And I'm going to attempt to take these and hot glue them into a pine tree. So many different kinds of shapes and sizes here. I'm just going to pick out some of the bigger ones and leave those for the bottom or last. So we're kind of adding an element of nature into our piece. And I also got some twine and some, it's kind of like a wire wrap twine, but it's got wire inside of that. So it's also a little bit bigger, so I was going to go for that for the trees. And, all right, those are pretty little. Okay. I'm going to start off with this piece because it's pointy. And I'm probably going to put it right about there. All right. So I'm going to probably also take these and use it for the hot glue because I don't really want to burn myself. So we'll start off with this first piece. We'll make it pretty tall. So I've got my handy dandy glue gun. I'm going to put on a little dot, and that's going to be my base or my start. So I want to continue adding a couple of pieces. I'll do 2. And I've never done this before, so I don't know what result we're going to get. But it's in my mind's eye, and I felt like I wanted to just do it. And it also gives an interesting dimension. Smushing it down to make sure that it actually adheres. We do still have a little bit of wet paint, so we'll see what the hot glue does. Grab a few pieces that are loose. Glue 2 on there. I'm just kind of trying to fill in a bit of a triangle shape. More pieces. Put a bigger dollop of glue. managed to get some wet glue into my paint, or I'm sorry, wet paint into my glue, but we are going to paint over that, so I'm not too terribly worried. Need a couple of bigger pieces. So I know I'm going to have to cut this, and I might need the wire cutters for this, but I'm going to probably add it right about there. So I'm thinking probably cut it right there. So I tried this earlier, and I ended up cutting or using the wire cutters and then the scissors. So this time I'm going to do the scissors and then the wire cutters. And sometimes the wire is a little difficult. Didn't cut all the way through. Okay. I'm going to make sure this stays a little twisted. And I didn't really want that wire to show, but it's going to get painted anyway. So see if I can kind of hide it with the glue. And we'll sneak a little bit more underneath. And just kind of pat it down. Make sure it stays. So I was thinking about using this for branches, and yeah. A little messy with the string, just gonna clean up as I go. Okay, I'm thinking I will cut that and glue that on. We'll just do a little branch here. Dab the glue there. Okay, lots of hot glue going on in here. I need to get a couple more Pinecone needle pouch hot glue. Careful, guys. It's so not fun. Alright, so I'm going to get a couple more just to fill this in and make it a little bit wider. But we got a pretty good base for our foliage. Okay, I have more pine leaves. I don't know what to call them, guys. Comment below. So I'm just going to build up a couple bigger ones along the bottom, and I should have plenty. We'll see how it goes. They are fragile. They do break. But they are organic, which also means they might eventually break down. But hopefully the paint will kind of suspend it and maybe seal it in and petrify the wood. Probably not, but it's an art experiment nonetheless. So kind of fun to just kind of play with different textures and paint, you know, just to see what happens. Yeah, that's a good one. Perfect. Sliver it in there. And I want to move up a little and just kind of give it a curve at the bottom. Lots of strings on this one. All right, I'm just gonna cut some of the extra little pieces of pinecone things. Again, guys, comment below. I don't know what they're called. All right, so I'm just cleaning up some strings here. And I do probably want to fill in the very bottom just to kind of seal it in and not have too many holes below. All right. And since these are all kind of glued on, I just want to tap and make sure that if anything that falls off isn't glued to it, we can move forward. Okay, so using gravity to make sure that it doesn't do that. All right, now I'm going to go back to some white paint and a palette knife, and I want to kind of come back in and, you know, tap on a little bit of snow. And we'll probably be able to do this a little bit, a little bit later as well, maybe to thicken it up a little. So we're just kind of creating our background. And if you have any purple that got into the sky, this is a good way to kind of cover it up. A little perceived oops or mistake. Just kind of spreading the paint around and get kind of some streaks in there. Not too worried about the tree just yet because we're going to be painting that another color. But we do want this background snow part to dry a little, as well as maybe a little bit of the purple too. Well, there's a string in there. Sometimes these little strings are relentless, but whatever. We'll just let it dry and peel it off later. Okay, we have a pretty good illusion of snow going on here. Pretty good packed melting. I'm going to wipe off my brush, or I'm sorry, my palette knife, just so I don't have globs of paint on it. And I'm going to get a darker green. Let's get my round big brush. I'm going to get a little bit of green on my brush, maybe a little touch of black to kind of make it just a little darker. I'm going to go ahead and paint my little pinecone tree. I'm going to be very careful I don't touch the actual canvas, and I'm just painting the pinecone portion of the tree. Now I haven't really watered down this paint. I actually want it to be kind of thick so it sticks, kind of rhymes. I'm just kind of getting in the little crevices a little bit more so I can kind of try to quasi-preserve it. Again, this is an experiment, so I don't know what's going to happen. It could just disintegrate, most likely. So I guess we can call it temporary experimental art. But it gives a really cool texture. And now we know it's possible to do. So we're going to let that dry. I'm going to add snow to that later. I'm going to make a little bit of a darker brown. And maybe a scoop of brown, a little touch of black. And I want to water this down a little. I want to touch on to my twine. A bit more water maybe so it soaks in. And it's wet enough to just kind of dust the canvas and just let it kind of soak in those little bristles. And I want to be really careful not to touch the white paint because it is still drying. But we have a really cool texture for foreground. I might want to cut that off later. Alright, so we have some pretty good trees for a base. I am going to just let that sit for a little while. And we'll probably add some maybe leaves, not sure yet. Might experiment with some cotton balls. Don't know. Alright, let's let that dry a little bit more. And I'm going to come in with a little bit of white. I'm going to start to kind of snow cap my little tree. Just trying to get the raised edges. And maybe cover up some of the glue along the side. Just letting some of the tree be exposed with the previous color underneath it. And just kind of random shapes that get kind of touched with the color. And if it's a little bit wet and spotched, just clean off your brush and get back into the paint and avoid that spot. Starting to look pretty cool and dimensional. I'm going to add a little bit more white. And I'm kind of using the same brush, but I just want to get a slight little dusting. Just kind of allowing that background color to kind of show through. Start to add a little bit of white or ice into the water. And maybe we'll do that to our branches. Mostly on the top portion of the branches. Let it really kind of settle into the valley of the branches where the little V is. Start to kind of mat a little. Bit of ice flowing down the river. All right, I've let this sit up for a little bit, and I'm going to go back into my white and just give a little bit more saturation of color into the tree and also the ground and probably this tree as well. Paint can kind of soak in and become a little transparent. We're just kind of thickening it up, making it feel like snow. Just make a little bit more on the ground. Open that up. And there you have the final piece. And this was created with pinecone seeds, leaves. Again, not sure what they're called. Please comment below and let me know. Anyway, you guys, fun, festive, seasonal painting. Fun for everybody. You can modify the colors if you are painting along, or if you just had a really good time just watching, just enjoying the process. Please give me a like and subscribe, and I'll keep releasing more of these. And thanks for coming. Have a great day. See y'all soon.